Buongiorno e benvenuti. Welcome to Art Yoga Pills with me, your host, Binny. In this space, we will connect and share together about creativity, inner child, and self-awareness. Siete pronti? Enjoy!
Ciao a tutti, kia ora, and welcome to a new episode of Art Yoga Pills. Today I have a very special guest with me, Josie Scott. How are you, Josie?
Oh, kia ora, Denny. I'm very well, thank you, and I'm happy to be doing this work with you this morning.
For me, it's absolutely the same. I was very excited for this moment in time to be connected with you once again. I had the possibility to connect in person with you a couple of weeks
Mm.
ago, and that sparked within myself like the curiosity to get to know you better and possibly also extend this connection with our listeners to see if there is a chance for them to see what they can grasp from you, what insight, what beautiful wisdom you might have for us to share today. So thank you for being my guest. And if you like, I'm really ready to ask you already the first question, which might possibly open up a portal for everybody to get to know you better, but especially me in this context.
Yes, absolutely. I'm all yours.
All right. So my first question for you, it could be quite simple, but also quite challenging. I'm noticing
Mhm.
how that might bring like deeper connection with ourselves. And in this case, the question is, who is Josie? And feel free to explore this question in whatever realm it feels appropriate for you today.
Thank you. Yes, it's a great question. As you said, we can it can take quite some time to unpack that for me personally. And I did remember that you said that you were going to ask this question, and what I woke up with this morning was the idea that really it depends on the day. Like who am I today? Who was I yesterday? Who will I be tomorrow? All those kind of things were coming up for me. So the first thing is who am I? Now I'm a really very proud grandmother. And I think, gosh, a few years ago, just that wouldn't have been in my vocabulary at all. So um, for me, being a proud grandmother is about obviously the love of my grandchildren, but there's also something about that. Maybe this is related to the hospice work I do, but it's what I know I leave behind. Yeah, and that feels just a blessing actually. Um, and so there's that. There's the family and being a mother, being a grandmother, being a wife, all of those roles and being a friend, a good friend. Those personal roles are really important to me and who I am in this world. Those connections that I have. And then, of course, there's my professional life, my working life, and those other relationships that I have, either with people like yourself, who I've met quite recently, although we've communicated for quite a while, because I think you booked into my workshop quite a long time ago. And the professional work relationships that I have with people who come to my trainings and my workshops, or who come to my drum sessions, or who I get the absolute honor of marrying, like I did yesterday. So that's my celebrant role. Those relationships have spread over the years. They're not just here in Aotearoa anymore. They're in different countries around the world where I've had the absolute privilege to go and work. So who am I? I'm someone who loves to be in relationship with people in a way that feels very real and grounded. So I'm not terribly good at being in large kind of social groups where we talk about things that don't feel real or vital for me. And I think people think I'm quite gregarious and outgoing, but actually in a big group of people, I'm not. I'm not that comfortable. I prefer to be in smaller groups where we can talk about whatever is real for us at that time. That was a bit of a ramble, wasn't it?
Wow,
that's
but
where I, that's where I am today, Dinny.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely pleased to
Uh,
see how you're unfolding a little bit of yourself in the present moment, as well
mm,
as sharing something
mm,
that I also resonate with, which is not really being really good at gathering in a big group. So finding small setting to possibly having deeper conversation and more
yes.
meaningful, which I'm hoping that we will have. But due to our encounter within this spectrum of time within this year 2023, I felt that
Mm,
there was something really precious to unfold with our connection, and I'm grateful that this is still happening through this opportunity of having you
mm,
as my guest.
likewise.
um,
Yeah.
and just like for those who might not know what I'm talking about, I'm just talking about my personal experience with one of Josie's workshop, which I picked from the list that you have, and it was in particular the one of creative ways to express grief and loss, which
Mm,
for me was
mm,
a very transformative workshop. Of course, I'm already related with art, and
mm.
due to this connection, I felt drawn to participate in this particular workshop. And I wonder, in your journey, when you recall your first connection, or one of the first connection with art in your journey, if it was something that you have memories of you since you were really young, or is something
Yes.
that supported you along your journey the more you
Mm,
were uh, discovering it.
yeah. Oh, thank you for that question. So I think so I grew up with mainly my mother, my father. They were separated, and my mother is still at the age of 82. She is still a working concert pianist, classical. So I grew up with music all the time. So we would leave for school and she'd be in her studio practicing, and we would come back from school and she'd still be in her studio practicing, and nothing much would have happened in between apart from her practicing. So we did have someone else kind of cooking for us and doing things, which was really lovely and a real privilege. But what that meant was that music was hugely important in our life. And I remember times when my mum would be really sad, and that could be for all kinds of reasons. And she would go and play the piano. And I remember seeing her playing and crying at the same time. And um, and I did that too. As I got a bit older, I would sit at the piano and play something and cry at the same time. And just thought that was a really normal thing to do, to be perfectly honest. So expressing myself through music was what I did as a quite a young person. And at school, I was one of those people who were told that they were bad at art. So drawing, painting, playing with any art materials was not something you were encouraged to do when I was at school, unless you were good at art. Art with a capital A. So that was quite challenging. But what I was told I was good at, and what I knew I was good at, was writing. So I would write, and I'd write lots of sad poems and lots of sad stories. Um, when things were difficult for me with whatever teenage angst I was going through at the time. Um, so I guess those would be my first points of working creatively with grief and loss. Not necessarily consciously, but just something that was modeled. And so I took that on and used it for myself. Mum would also write to us when she was feeling sad, especially if my sister or I had done something inappropriate. She'd write us a long letter about how sad she was about it. Which, when I think about it, was probably a really great way of doing it, because it meant she never yelled at us or told us off in any kind of way, but she would write about her disappointment and her sadness. So she was a good role model in that way for working creatively with grief. Hmm.
Wow, I'm really fascinated, especially now that I dive deep into the practice myself and notice how beautiful the connection with creativity in whatever form comes can be truly beneficial to unlock or release
Yeah,
something that is within ourselves. And
yeah.
it's something also that, from my personal experience, I haven't noticed before in this type of deeper connection with in which we can dive into something that normally we might tend to avoid in our
Mm.
journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And I wonder if you have any suggestion or any inspirational connection that people that might not have considered as myself before I actually practice myself, how it could be beneficial, this connection, and what that type of connection with themselves through creativity can support someone in doing for their well-being and their health in discovering and tapping into um, I don't even want to call them negative feeling, but the feeling that we consider a little bit darker than the other one, like
or painful or distressing feelings, or feelings of discomfort.
mm,
Yeah. So I guess to carry on from what I was saying before, what I discovered after I left school and wasn't kind of constrained in terms of what art was, and felt more confident to play around with other kinds of materials. So, for example, collage, which I absolutely love, and just making a mess with paint and playing with pastels and all of those kinds of different materials. Along the way, I discovered for myself a whole variety of possibilities in terms of living with grief and exploring grief rather than swallowing it. And so I learned the benefits to myself when a friend of mine, when I was quite young, in my, I think I was 16 or 17, and a group friend of ours drowned. And it was really shocking for us all. And we all got together on the beach, and I'm not even sure where it came from, but I said, let's make some stuff. And together we collected all kinds of found objects. I know that that's what they're called now because I've done my master's in creative arts therapy. But that back then it was just a load of stuff that we collected, and we made this beautiful sculpture in honor of our friend. And we sat round and we drank something and sang some songs and made some music and supported each other, and left feeling still distressed because he died and we couldn't do anything about that, but feeling connected. And that gave us a sense of, I guess, a strength. So there's something about creating both individually but also in a group that I think is a very therapeutic and gentle process. At times, it's not always gentle. Sometimes it can be very harsh, but also healing at the same time. Because what we're doing is looking at ourselves and feeling those emotions rather than swallowing them and having them sit somewhere. Well, for me, they would sit in my stomach, and I'd have a big rock in there. I could just walk around with a big rock. So I know that I have to do something with that. Otherwise, I'm going to feel really unwell. And what I notice with the clients that I work with, they will often come talking about having palpitations. Some of them have been hospitalized and checked for heart and then been told you're having a panic attack or an anxiety attack, and kind of they're not really sure what that actually means or what to do with it. Or they've got really bad migraines, really bad headaches, something's going on in their body. And when they're actually able to do some work around releasing that, whether that's through their body work or some drumming or creating something that they can take away with them and carry on working with, they notice a shift in their bodies, and that pain, physical distress eases. It's not about it going away or being fixed, unfortunately. That's obviously what lots of people would like, and we can't do that because grief isn't like that. It doesn't go away, but what we do is we learn to live alongside it gently, hopefully. I hope that answers something.
Absolutely, yes. I feel that everything that we are able to share, it comes also for me as a form of self-reflection for myself, and hopefully inspiring also whoever is listening in this moment to realize that there are alternative possibilities in which we can tap into ourselves and possibly release some of those energy that are stuck somewhere in our body. And creativity to me is one of those beautiful forms in which I tend to tune in as well, to explore feelings, and now knowing also how to tap into those feelings when they are very unpleasant is something that has given me a bigger understanding of how I can connect and release, and doing it as well in group settings. For me, that was the most powerful experience that we had as a collective to support one another, and healing certain aspect of ourselves through that honoring of the space in which we were working.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been witnessing that over the last 5 weeks, where I've been facilitating a bereavement support group. We call it Grief Talks, and that's through our local hospice. And it ended up with 5 women, all of whose husbands had died in the last 12 months or so, and made those connections with each other. But some of the stories they shared and the creative work we did together, again, it doesn't take away the grief, but it makes it's there now. They've seen each other's. They know they're not alone. They've shared some really powerful stories, and felt held and supported in those stories. And so they're able to not feel as isolated. And I think that's been very powerful for them. And they've been able to step aside from that idea of, I have to do it in these stages. And somehow once I've done those stages, I'm going to get out the other end and be healed. We've been able to kind of talk about different ways of thinking about grief and how they are able to continue their bonds and make meaning out of life now, as well as carry forth the meaning that they had in their life with their husbands, who they love dearly, will do, and will continue to do so. So yeah, and there's always a huge learning for me, and I think for everybody in those groups, because we share a lot with each other over that time, and that support that they give each other to actually lean into their grief rather than shut it down, because that's what they need to do at work or in the supermarket or wherever else they happen to be, because everybody else wants them to be all right.
Wow, that's such a profound truth of also how we need to wear certain masks in a certain context to see that everything is all right and we are still moving forward, even when it's truly not. So I'm really glad that you also tap into that acknowledgement of how we can potentially find settings which can support us in finding different ways in which we can connect with grief and loss that might support us in rebalancing our well-being for then moving on in other situations in which we can't truly tap into those feelings that we might still have for a very long time, if not for our whole life, but knowing how we can connect in a different way to those aspects of ourselves. And I'm actually curious through your experience, because of course I have mine, and it might be very different, but I noticed that uh, my connection with the group setting seems always to invite more women than men. And I wonder, in your experience, how it is this navigating this journey, maybe with men, which for the type of society in which we are still living in, it doesn't allow them to be as open as women might be in tapping into certain, even just like feelings, not certain feelings, but feelings in general. And I wonder how it's been your experience.
Yeah, thank you for that. I've been reflecting on that myself lately. We the week after I facilitated the workshop that you attended, which was all women, I facilitated another workshop out at the beach where 15 people came along to work creatively with me, 15 therapists and social workers, and they were all women. And I'm like, oh, how is this working for our men? who actually often need to talk to other men. I really feel that. We've had 2 older men die from suicide in our tiny little community in the last 12 months. Older men. That really saddens me and saddens our community. And, you know, they, for whatever reason, weren't able to reach out, or maybe they reached out and weren't connected up. I'm not sure. But my sense is that we need more men working in this field. I do have male clients. I often have male clients. They don't want to come to groups. Can't get them to come along to bereavement support group. We've tried for years. Every now and then one male will come, and then what happens is all the women make him the cup of tea and fuss over him. I'm saying, let's not do that. Let's work together as a group. But you know, those roles are really strongly ingrained. So when I work with men as individuals, which is what happens, I do my very best to encourage them to look at other spaces in the community that they can engage with, whatever those spaces may be, whether it's going to the men's shed so they can make stuff, or going to the golf course for a game of golf, or you know, Rotary or Lions, which now have, they are still quite male, but they do have women in those groups too. Trying to link them up with something else in the community that involves them engaging with other people, male and female. But and I'm also I've encouraged my husband to start meeting with other men in the community that I know. So for example, someone out here whose wife died really suddenly recently, who we know socially. So my husband's going to visit him now. They get on really well. They don't talk about his wife dying. They talk about fishing and all of those other things that they're interested in. But I know it's making a difference. So yeah, just engaging men to work with men, older men. Now that's the age group I'm talking about. I don't think our younger men have necessarily the same issues, but our older men do. And they are dying because of it. There's nothing okay about that.
Wow, yeah, thank you for sharing something related to your personal experience about this topic, because I notice as well how in group settings, especially the one that I work with seniors, I've been so far having just a man in 4 years' time. And I notice even for him how tough it was to be there initially. Then
Yeah.
he gently adapted to the space that we were sharing and felt more
Yes.
confident, and
Yeah.
even calling the group space a family
Yeah.
space.
Right.
So
Great.
it's beautiful
Yes.
how when they put out themselves out there, how many more things that are available, not necessarily a group setting that involves creativity, but as you also share from the personal experience that you have with your husband, even talking about something else that makes meaning and joyful connection, it can be very beneficial. And
Yeah.
just knowing that there are things available is so great as
That's
well.
right. And I notice with drumming groups, so I have mainly women that come to my drumming groups, some men. So if I've got, say, 10 women, there'll be 2 or 3 men. But what I notice is the male drum teachers attract more men. So yeah, when I go to a drum class that has a male teacher, whether it's a teacher from West Africa or a teacher from New Zealand, there will be a lot more men in the class, and the class is a lot faster and harder. But hey, that's fine. Yeah, so it does seem to be that that's perhaps what those men are looking for anyway. I've also noticed over the years our beautiful local yoga class. So when we started, it's a female teacher and it was all women that went. And then Graham started coming along, my husband. And then he said to one of his mates, you need to come, it's really great. And now we have half and half, male and female, in that group. So that's great too. And MRRT, does work on the creative aspects of using our body and puts those in as part of our yoga experience. And they're all very happy to be part of that now. But it's taken a few years. So it's also shifting those roles and those concepts, isn't it? Of, yoga's for, I don't know, who do people think yoga's for? I'm not sure. Yoga's for everyone, of course, we know that. But there does seem to be that kind of stuck idea about who goes to yoga and who goes to drumming and who makes art and all of those things. So that's part of our role, isn't it, in the world, really, Vinny, is to challenge those thoughts and stereotypes and widen the possibilities.
And it seems like to be something that anyway is quite recent, because if we think about yoga, all the gurus were men as well as art. If I think about like the Italian history of art, it comes just with the male figure that were tapping into their creativity to create something amazing to watch. And as well as for yoga, working with their body to create more strength. So I don't know exactly in time and space in history how that switch and became more like a female world. But I'm glad to know that it's slowly possibly mixing it up and becoming equal in that, knowing that there are no boundaries for any type of activity. And those one especially that can be beneficial for our health and well-being, they are definitely open to everyone, even if might not look like from the outside.
Yeah. And playfulness, there's something about playfulness which I think in this world of busyness and the need to work hard and earn enough money to live, the sense of playfulness can disappear, particularly for adults. So if I go into a class of young children and say, who can drum? They all put their hand up, and who can solo? They all put their hand up, and they're all really excited. And who can draw a picture of your drum? And they all put their hand up, Whereas when I work with my adult group who've been drumming for years, and I say, right, who's going to solo today? No one can solo. Let's put something on the page to express how we feel about our drums. Oh, no one can do that. But I know you all can. You all could when you were 5. Why can't we all when we're 50, So there's those challenges as well to work with and just help people feel that they can play and that it's okay to make mistakes. Hey, it's fine. People are so worried about that. A lot of people are worried about that.
Yeah, and it's something so fascinating also in the type of workshop that I'm trying to do, like to reconnect with that inner child, which actually means exactly that, leaving aside the boundaries of what is right and what is wrong, and leaving possibly also aside the component of judgment and criticism, but keeping within the playfulness, which is something that it can be so precious when we give ourselves permission to be a little bit more silly and goofy there.
Yes. And so if I go back to the beginning about being a grandparent, and that's one of the greatest things about being a grandparent is, I can be really, really silly with my 7-year-old and my 3-year-old grandchildren, usually via FaceTime because they're in Melbourne. So we get really silly when we're together. But yeah, the joy of doing that, because they never say, oh, you've done that wrong, Grandma. They just think everything we do is hysterical and funny, and they love it. The more playful, the better. So that's probably what all adults need, really, is time with those little ones that relax and get used to what being playful means. And they can be sad as well, those children, of course, and they have grief in their life. Even as small children, they have grief in their life about things that are happening. And that's all part of who they are, and they're still able to play. So, yeah. We have to keep spreading that out there, don't we, Jen?
Absolutely agree on that, so that we can all possibly feel a little bit more lighter and free to be ourselves in our everyday life.
Mm.
Even when the context might be really serious, still find the playfulness side of every experience that we are having.
Yes. Yes, and there's something else in there about I've been thinking a lot, and I think a lot about this. I try on a daily basis to find a moment of awe, and sometimes I have to kind of make an effort to do it, but most days it just actually happens quite organically now. So like yesterday, for example, this beautiful little intimate wedding, and I'm standing there with the groom, and he's been kind of a bit concerned about things like the wind and the marquee flapping, and were there enough glasses for, he's done all of that in the lead up to it, and I've been saying to him, all good, don't worry about anything. And he's standing there waiting for the bride, and I can see him still kind of reflecting on some of these things that he's a bit nervous about. And then she arrives, and everybody looks at her, and I'm looking at him, and he is completely rooted to the spot, and he's absolutely in the moment, and these tears roll down his cheek as he sees her arrive. This huge, powerful emotion just takes him, and he's right there with it. And for me, it was like, oh, there we are. That's what this is all about. That beautiful expression of his absolute love for her as she arrived. And nobody got to see that but me. And that was just a beautiful moment of awe for me, of the power of that love and connection, and how all that other stuff just disappeared, because it really didn't matter. Yeah. So finding those moments, because the other thing, of course, is that there is a lot of difficult, challenging world events happening, which can cause a lot of sadness and distress for people. It's not always possible to feel playful and find that sense of the playful child, is it? Sometimes the sadness is too great. So then how else do we look for it? How else do we find hope? And I love that idea and concept of those moments of awe that they're there. We can look at the stars, we can look at the ocean, we can look at a connection, we can listen to a piece of music. There's always something that we can find to bring us back to the gorgeousness of life, really.
I I trying to do something similar related with gratitude as well. And lately I've been listening to the same meditation every morning that is 8 minutes of gratitude meditation. And it's so simple that the connection that is supporting me with simple action, even like the environment that I'm in, to acknowledging something that I already possess in my life, and see how sometimes we are always looking at what we don't have and projecting to the outer
Right.
world that is still yet to be ours.
Yeah.
And acknowledging what is already present in our life, it
Yeah.
can shift the perspective in which
Yeah.
we are connecting with those moments more fully, possibly. And this has been beneficial for me, and also, as you said, also in those days where it might be challenging to see those beauty that life is already surrounding us with.
Yeah.
It's very important to me, at least, to trying and find it in whatever moment of the day, morning, afternoon, evening, just allowing myself to tune with that and see how that can support me in elevating my energy, my frequency, my connection with what is already present. And yeah, and see, even in challenging days when nothing feels like shiny and bright,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
that can give me at least the sense that it's not all lost, and it's quite beautiful to connect with these little details of life. And as for the one that you share, it's something that it's so simple, like observing someone's um, eyes, and see how everything can switch in a moment by
Yeah.
looking at their loved one in this case, but it could be even simply as staring at the sky,
Yeah.
looking at the birds passing by, or looking at the ocean, looking at the cup of coffee, tea, or cacao that we might have
Yeah.
next to
Yeah.
us, and just
Yeah.
observing the flavor of everything
Yeah.
that life was already has available for us. So,
Mm.
wow.
Absolutely. I mean, I think about, this glass of water that I hold here, and that water just came out of the tap. That's it. I can turn my tap on and fill a glass of water and drink it. I mean, I've been to many parts of the world where that is, if I did that, I'd be really sick. So, yeah, there's lots to appreciate, isn't there, about our day-to-day lives, really. But for some people, that's just not present, not available for them. And so our work, my work, your work, is about helping them find some connections, find some ways to, tap back into the other possibilities that live alongside grief and sadness and loss and all
And
those
I'm
other.
and I'm also curious to check in with you if you feel like sharing also something about workshop that I haven't yet myself done, and see how those can also be beneficial to tap into ourself and our creativity and our playfulness. And the two that comes to me that I know that you are also hosting the drumming one and the
Mm-hmm.
sand play one, which to me
Mm.
they are also beautiful way in which we can tap into our creativity. Slightly different than when we are thinking about creativity. Oh, sand play? Oh,
Yeah,
drumming? What is
yeah,
that supposed to be, you
yeah,
know? And I
yeah.
wonder
Thank
if you
you.
wish to share a bit more about that.
Sure. For me, sand play, I first came across sand play when I think it was 1997, when I came to Auckland to do some training around working with people who had been exposed to sexual violence and sexual abuse. So I was doing some training specifically around that way of working and being able to support women and children up in our community here. And I say women and children because that was with the local rape crisis group who weren't working with men at that time. So that was the focus of the training. And I went along quite nervously thinking, oh, what's this going to be like? And actually what it was a very creative, beautiful, welcoming environment. And the trainer there brought in some miniatures, some small objects and some sand and some trays, and just really gave us an experience of building a world. And I immediately felt connected to that possibility and that way of working, partly because of that past experience of, you can't do art with a capital A. And knowing that and being taught that you can't get sand play wrong. It's impossible to build a wrong world. Whatever you build in the world is yours, and you can move it and you can change it and you can leave it the same and you can do it again and again and again until something moves and something changes, and it's working with our unconscious as well as our conscious. So it's a beautiful boundaried, safe way of working, if you are held well by the therapist who is leading you and supporting you with it. So over the next 25 or so years, I've learned more and more about sand play and sand tray. There's two different ways of working. One is a Jungian approach, and the other way is a kind of wider approach, bringing in whatever therapies and techniques and theories that the therapist works with. And so my learning of that for myself and my own therapeutic process through that work has led me to support my clients to do that work, and also workshop it with other therapists. So they come along to my little whare, my little 100-year-old batch at Bailey's Beach, 6 people maximum. And we work together for a couple of days, exploring lots of different possibilities and ways of using sand and miniatures and other creative mediums to then be able to offer it to the people that we're working with. And interesting enough, over the years, I've worked with children. I don't work with children anymore, but I've worked with many children over the years, and adults, female and male, who have really enjoyed the process of building their worlds and exploring what's happening for them in a very different kind of way than sitting there and talking about things. Sometimes talking is not helpful for people. They're talked out, or they're not talkers in the first place. So, but being able to explore worlds in a different way can be very helpful. And it's boundaried. It's beautiful. You don't have to face a big blank page. Yeah. So that's sand play. And I think the other thing about it is that, particularly in Aotearoa, people have very strong connections to the beach here, and to water and to sand. So it's a welcoming space for most people, not for all. For most people, they get their hands in the sand and something happens. I can ground myself here. I feel safer in here. So that's my one of my passions and my love for that way of working, which has happened for many years. And the other one is rhythm and drumming. Well, as our teachers tell us, the first sound we ever hear is our mother's heartbeat. So rhythm is primal. And all those people who say, I don't have any rhythm, they will say, if your heart is beating, you have rhythm. So your rhythm and my rhythm might be different rhythms, but if we put them together, we can connect. So for me, my love of rhythm and drumming in particular, which I feel gives me huge energy and keeps me strong. Lugging the drums around keeps me strong for a start, but actually drumming helps keep me strong and energized. And that was one of my greatest gifts when I was caring for my dear friend at the end of her life. That took a lot of energy and there was a lot of grief, and I would go to my weekly drum class. My husband would push me out the door and I would get to my drum class and drum for 2.5 hours, and I'd come back with enough energy for the whole week. So yeah, it's like a recharge. So again, that my experience and my love of drumming and my learning of all these rhythms and all the different ways that we can use drumming has led me to use it in my work, and then offer a 2-day workshop where people can come along and learn about the possibilities with rhythm and drumming. You don't have to be a drummer to come along, because we start from the beginning and go through all the different ways we could maybe use it. And yeah. That answer your question?
Absolutely, yes. And I really like the insight from your teacher who shared that we all have um, the frequency, the beat, the connection with something that we might not know, but if we realize that within ourselves we already have our heart beating, that is already something that is connecting us to all the frequency, energy, and vibration that we are already producing with our own body, even if we don't realize or don't remember.
And I think for me, what's happened over the years, the more I've drummed and the more I've learned about drumming, is the more I've then tuned into all the rhythms that are around me. The rhythm of the rain, the rhythm of the ocean, the rhythm of the tap when it's dripping, the rhythm of my dog breathing. It doesn't matter what it is, the rhythm that the car makes, there's rhythm all around us. And if we can tap into that, we're much more connected with the world, really, the universe. The rhythm that the trolley makes when I walk around the supermarket. Oh, I've got this trolley making that sound. I hear it everywhere all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is definitely something that whatever form of creativity, but especially the one related with music, is bring us a big awareness in terms of our senses and noticing what we are able to observe, what even triggered us, because there might be even sound that they might feel quite triggering, and having a different understanding of ourselves in relationship with this wholesome sensory experience that either drum play can offer us, but also scent play, because it's all about our hands touching and playing with things that are not just flat surface to feel, but a different type of environment in which we can relate to, either through music or through play and creativity, or all of them together.
Yeah, for sure. So awakening to our senses, opening them up, again, that can help us feel more connected to whatever it is that's around us, rather than that disconnected and isolating feeling of, I'm here with this huge grief or this huge distress of some sort, and nobody else gets it, and I'm all alone. But if I'm more connected into my senses and the world around me, I can search out those other possibilities again, that other way of being.
And I guess that what comes to me in form of connection is what we can expect from you in 2024, if someone felt inspired by all the sharing that we've been doing so far and wish to connect with you either in person or through your social media, which will be available in the description of this episode. What would be an invitation that you would like to offer us based on when you're offering to the community and possibilities to connect?
Thank you. Well, I am offering a couple of workshops next year here at Bailey's. So they're already on my website, the sound play one and the rhythm one at the end of the year. That will be November. And then there will be some community drumming sessions up here that I will facilitate. I haven't worked out the dates yet. I'm back off to Ghana for January to drum school there, which I'm excited about going back. So I'll be coming back with lots of new rhythms, and then I'll work out the dates. And I do travel, Dinny, so I'm often on the road with all of my creative friends, drums in the back or sound play or whatever it is that people have asked me. So if people want to get a group together and have me come and facilitate something, I will do that, time permitting. Yeah, I'm also, as I've got older, I've got a lot better at taking care of myself. So I do take time out, and I've decided I don't really do winters anymore very well. So July and August will find me somewhere warmer these days.
Wow, thank you.
The offerings are there, and people are welcome to make contact with me. Just pop onto my website, my contact details there.
Yeah, thank you also for the reminder of taking care of ourselves, knowing when we need to rest and finding more suitable places for our soul to be nourished, which is something that we might forgot at times. So through your own sharing, it I guess to me is a great reminder.
Oh, good. Thank you. I think those of us who have family on the other side of the world, there's challenges around that, but there's also some really great things about that. It means that we can go to their summer and our winter, and we have somewhere to stay. It's marvelous.
I resonate absolutely.
I know you do.
I just keep my winter here in New Zealand to do that and visit my family after several years, and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Having the feeling of never leaving the sun and the warmth of the earth by
Marvelous.
following and chasing the right season, and also gathering with family.
Yeah, good to be able to do.
I just would like to check with you. I have a final question, but I would like to check with you first if there is anything else that we might not have covered that you feel might be valuable to share in relation with your offering, but also in relation to any other insight that comes to your mind, and you wish to use this as an opportunity to giving it to us as a reminder, knowing that maybe the last question will also include this, but before I check in with you.
Thank you. I was I think there's something about balance in work, and again, as I've got older, I've been more able to achieve that balance. It takes time, but I chose to become a celebrant gosh, 12, 13, 14 years ago now, I think. I went to and did some training at the Celebrant school, and I chose to do that because I felt like I really needed to get some balance in my work. At that point, I was working more or less full time in my therapy work, and it was very intense and tiring. So finding that space to do some training and then taking on mainly weddings back in those days, because I was so full I couldn't take on funerals. It was just hard to take them on at short notice. But I've grown that side of my work over the years and shrunk my therapy side. So now I can do both. And it has felt like a beautiful balance for me, personally and professionally. And the thing I love is being able to use some of my creative aspects of myself and my work in those other ceremonies. So, for example, I've drummed a bride in several times now. And at funerals, I'm able to offer different ideas around what people might choose to do. So everybody, for example, can make a little pocket shrine, which we did at the workshop that you attended. You know, they can make little pocket shrines and pop those on the coffin if they want. Or, you know, just different ways of working with end of life and death and dying that I've found to be really helpful for families. So, yeah, that's something about us as therapists needing to find that balance for ourselves. And I know it's not always easy, but trusting that it will come in time and looking at what else can we do that makes sense, that holds our integrity in terms of who we want to be in our workspace, but that also gives us those moments of awe that we might not get in other forms of work that we do.
Wow, thank you for sharing about that. Also, because I used to be a person who, not just for me, but I'm hoping that this will be useful for our listener as well, to notice how it shifted the way in which we are relating with roles, especially in the work environment. And I used to be this person that wanted a single career because that was all the previous generation before me, from my parents to my grandparents, were doing before. And knowing that now we don't truly need to stick with one single thing. If there are more things that we love, there will be definitely a way that we can combine all these little passion of ours and define them in other roles that we can share with ourselves and the community, and see how we can keep on supporting others with meaning, without going out of alignment with our integrity and our intention, and possibly our purpose and meaning too.
Yes, I love that. Staying in alignment, not going out of alignment. That's right. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so for those who are planning a future wedding or might feel need support for funerals, there is also that beautiful ceremonial connection that you can do with Josie. I have to say, I'm still waiting for my partner to propose to me, but if that will ever happen, I know that I will wish to have you as my celebrant.
Thank you. It would be my delight and pleasure.
So hopefully my partner is listening to this episode too. Just an insight for everybody out there. But to bringing it back to the empowerment that we having had so far with our sharing, I would like to conclude this episode by asking you my final secret question that I often trying to bring out in the table for my guest, and that comes as an invitation, of course, with the possibility of sharing 3 empowering messages that you wish to share with us today, knowing that those might serve also for you as a reminder for yourself. And it doesn't matter how small or big they are, to me everything is meaningful and welcome in this space.
That's wonderful. Well, what do I say to myself when I'm about to do something that's quite big and scary. I look at myself in the mirror. So when I'm doing a big funeral, and remember that the funerals I do are in my local community. So I'm out there, kind of exposed in some ways, although of course it's not about me. None of it's about me. It's about the family. So that's one of the things I will say to myself. I'm here for them. Yeah. And then I will say, you've got this. I'll look at myself in the mirror and I'll say, you've got this. You can do this. I've asked you to do this because they know you've got it. Yeah. And then very simply, the absolute go-to for me is always about breathing. Yeah. Feel my toes on the ground and breathe. And it doesn't necessarily mean deep belly breaths, because that doesn't work for everyone. But it's like, I have this breath, my breath, and I can do it. It's pretty simple, really. Yeah. Don't hold what isn't mine. Yeah. This is about them. I don't need to hold anything that isn't mine. I've got this, and I'm breathing.
Wow, thank you, Josie. To me, the simple, the better, I guess, and that's the
Right.
connection that I'm finding with myself. And of course, because I'm the first one to just listen and absorbing those insights for us, I always feel the pleasure of using them also as a reminder for myself, even to the simplistic act of being an observer of our breath and see how that simple connection with something that our body does naturally can support me and feel more grounded and steady and present to myself.
Yeah, right here, right now. That's it. That's what we have, isn't it? Right
So
here,
let's
right
try
now.
to make the most out of this experience right here and right now.
That's it.
And so far, I'm really grateful for this opportunity that I had today to do that, to truly embrace my right here and right now with some deep and beautiful sharing. Thanks to you, your presence, your wisdom, and all that you had available for us today.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me along.
Thank you, Josie. And for all our listeners, I'm hoping that you have been inspired by all this sharing, knowing that if you wish to connect even deeper with Josie, everything will be available in the description of this episode. So I invite you, encourage you to have a look at what is out there available from Josie's point of view, and hopefully having also a big realization about yourself and your way in which you can connect with you, your breath, your creativity, your playfulness, your emotion, whatever emotion you are resonating with today. So thank you everyone for listening, and especially thank to you, Josie. And I'm hoping you have a great day. Bye.
You too. Bye.
Grazie per averci fatto compagnia. We hope you enjoyed your time with us. If you wish to stay updated and connected, visit us on our social media channels and our website www.artyoga.co. Ci sentiamo presto. Ciao! See you!